Good evening and welcome to Straight Talk with me, Sifiso Mahlangu. Tonight I bring you the Statistician-General, Mr. Pali Lehohla. We'll discuss collusion, corruption, a moral fiber decay in society, the stats concerning Jacob Zuma and the ANC, particularly concerning corruption in the public sector and collusion in the private sector. This is Straight Talk. Stay tuned. Mr. Lehohla, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I've always wanted to have you on the show.
Oh, is that so?
Yes, sir.
That's good.
Let's get to the business of tonight. We're going to have a lengthy conversation. Mr. Lehohla, let's start here. Who is your political boss?
Let me say what the Act says. The Act provides for three authorities: the Statistician-General, the Minister, and Statistics Council. All these are independent forces. The Statistician-General's responsibility is to produce statistics independent of both the Minister and Council. But the Statistics Council advises both the Minister and the Statistician-General. So in that configuration, yes, there is a political boss for administrative purposes to ensure that the Statistician-General is appointed by the President and then looks at incidents of the Statistician-General administratively and prepares, takes the budget to go and argues the budget in Parliament. But the task of the Statistician-General is totally independent of politics.
I want to cause your attention to a piece written by the University of Durban's Dr. Teller. And it says, Stats SA manipulates statistics to make Zuma look bad, whilst overlooking the gross corruption and societal collusion in predominantly white private sector organizations.
That's a lie. It's an abject lie. I don't know what the methodology would have been to favor one or the other. In the first place, we haven't run statistics that look at President Zuma. We ran statistics that looks at the performance of South African society. Either it be business, either it be service delivery, either it be people's perceptions or real experiences about service delivery. So that's a lie.
Mr. Lehohla, you would know more about statistics and inequality.
I don't know which this professor is.
More than I would. But NN7 did an expose that's been running just for over a week now on collusion and corruption in Treasury. There's an internal report in Treasury citing maladministration, collusion, corruption, you know, the works. The Treasury is out, the report is out there on our website. What mechanisms do you use to statify corruption in the public sector?
Well, we don't run statistics on corruption, let me say that first. I mean, my organization is a subject of Auditor General, so I suppose Treasury in terms of the Act and everything. And that's the authority that can talk authoritatively on what has gone wrong. And it will give you a qualified audit, a disclaimer, and so on. And believe you me, my organization has been in that kind of state of disclaimers, not because we are corrupt, but because of the system's dysfunctionality. We have been in that space for all those kinds of things, disclaimer, or rather the moderate one, matters of emphasis, qualification, and the worst one, which is the disclaimer. And that was when we were building the organization. It's the Auditor General that can express their opinion on these matters. That's how I know government functions. Obviously, there are other arms of the state that look at things as they happen. Our statistics hasn't looked at that. However, there is an intention from the governance, peace, and security statistics, which is a series that we are beginning to consider, that may reveal such things in the future. At the moment, I can't say anything except to say I've read the report too.
You cite on public perception. What is the public perception concerning state organs at this stage?
Well, I mean, there are things that we have looked at, like crime, and perceptions around crime, and perceptions around institutions that are involved in the area of crime. So that we are setting off. There are also areas such as perceptions around service delivery, that kind of thing. We have reports on those. If specifically I were to look at crime, I mean, take for instance the report I released recently, 800,000 cases of robbery, house robbery and burglary. The public has experienced. The public has not reported half of those. They have reported only 400,000 to the police. Of those 400,000, the police have implemented arrests in 70,000, and conviction is only 20,000. Why do the public not report crime? It's because they have very little belief that the police can do anything. It's a perception. And that's why most of the crimes are not reported. What is their perception about prosecution and how the justice system works? They don't have confidence in the justice system.
Mr. Lehohla, you say you have seen the report, the ANN7 expose. Yeah. In your view, who...
Not the report. I'm saying what is being reported.
What is being reported.
Yes, I've not gone into the document.
In your view, who should be the best person to respond to that expose?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose, as I said, the institutions of the state have the Auditor General, who has to be able to say a number of things, and I think the Auditor General...
I would say the Auditor General, SCOPA...
those are the institutions of the state, but it doesn't stop.
Protector.
But it doesn't stop the public from expressing an opinion, I suppose. I mean, that's a very clear role that democracy bestows to citizens.
You oppose Dr. Teller's writing on that.
That's nonsense. That writing of his
stats essay.
That writing of his is nonsense. It's nonsense.
The stats to make President Zuma
you have to invite him here. I'll tell him he's talking nonsense.
Is corruption less in President Zuma's administration?
I haven't measured that, and I don't have the authority in the numbers to say so. The Statistician-General talks on the numbers, on the evidence. Let me go back to this nonsense that your professor has written. It is the same nonsense that was articulated by some in the ruling party when we released the service delivery reports in 2007, and they said we wanted to make Mbeki look good so that he can be better in Polokwane. The same kind of nonsense.
Was that nonsense?
It was nonsense. We went to households, asked people, what have you achieved, what have you got? And they said what they have. And that was corresponded in terms of evidence from municipal data that we also collect. Ours was to report on this. Now, people tie political processes to the data. Of course, they are entitled to. But
why can't you do for President Zuma what you did for Mbeki?
We didn't do... No.
People are responding to the fact that in the past, they suggested that you are attempting to make President Mbeki look good.
Listen to me. Statistician has a timetable of service that it runs. There was a census in 1996, and when President Mandela received the results from the head of statistics of Africa, Mark Oken, delivered by myself, here is what President Mandela said. He said, at last, we know. We have numbers that we can work with. We understand the depth of the problems and where possible we have made progress. In 2001, we released the results of the census. We ran a census, and in 2003, we released the results of that census. President Mbeki, receiving these results, expressed his views in relation to what the challenges were. In 2007, we released the community survey results that were on our timetable, and the results showed that there have been improvements in service delivery. In 2011, we released census results, which showed that there have been dramatic service delivery improvements. In 2016, I released the results of the community survey, which said a lot about what has gone right and what has gone wrong. In all these time points, we are releasing on a predetermined timetable. In between, we have a raft of 246 reports, that is a report every day, that talks to the state of the economy, the state of the population, the state of society in South Africa. And those are done without fear or favor. That is why there is a Statistics Act that proclaims that the Statistician-General, in his task of undertaking data, is autonomous and independent from political influence. So we have no taste buds as regards a political person or whatever.
So the suggestions that...
That is an insinuation that is terrible.
The stats essay manipulates the results to...
That's nonsense. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a nonsense. I don't know where that professor ever got. I don't know where that professor ever got his qualifications. He must be disqualified from being a professor.
Okay. Mr. David Mahlangu, our Minister of State Security, released his budget vote 3 weeks ago and stated that 80 billion rand leaves this country illicitly every year.
Well, I don't know where Mr. Mahlangu got his numbers, but I do know that there are concerns about illicit financial flows. We in South Africa, our trade statistics are not in a state that you can actually tell whether that is not the case or not. But it's only when we have actually measured this adequately that we can make an assertion of that nature one way or the other. But our exports and imports statistics are in need of serious repair. That one I can assure you. There is a study that was instituted by the African Union and the Economic Commission under our former President Mbeki. And he has articulated and observed that there are illicit financial flows annually on the continent to other parts of the world. And it is the duty of statistics offices, South Africa Reserve Banks, and the tax authorities to tighten their systems in order to address this and to know it quantitatively and follow up. And it is the duty of these institutions worldwide. It's not just about South Africa or the continent. It's a worldwide phenomenon, and we ourselves as statisticians have not done enough to deal with this matter. Obviously, we depend on administrative records. We don't have statisticians in these environments, but it's a new architecture that is required in order to deal with our understanding, particularly of those who have to enforce the law, to know what is happening in the area of illicit financial flows. It is complicated by the fact that they are multinationals, and multinational operations are across countries. And in the movement of things, and as multinationals manage their own profit-seeking behaviors, do things. And for statisticians, is to measure the economy of the sovereign. And then, of course, we all work as statistics organizations through Comtrade. We are aware that at Comtrade, which is the UN statistics system that looks at how trade across the world operates, we are aware that what we export is not what others import. What is important, what is imported is often more than what is exported in the Comtrade, suggesting, therefore, there are leakages in the system, but also pointing out to the fact that movement of goods and services across countries, particularly goods across countries, are not well recorded. For instance, South Africa could be exporting gold to Switzerland, but that gold may be destined for other places, and therefore it will be recorded twice. And that is what the Comtrades try to understand, and also what we try to understand.
Well, do you think the figure of 80 billion rands illicitly leaving the country is a conservative figure?
I do not know. I haven't measured. I cannot speculate. I can only talk on what I have measured. I can only talk on the evidence.
Mr. Lehohla, I would aspire to believe that the Minister of State Security putting down 80 billion rands as a figure, the head of State SA should perhaps quantify to say, is it more or less?
I can't quantify on his words. I have to quantify on his methods.
And you don't know how he obtained...
I don't know how you obtained the numbers. So I can't quantify on anybody's words. I quantify on methods.
The Stats SA often speaks of inequality, and I've heard you speak of the inequalities of this nation, the gripe we deal with today as the generations of apartheid. Our dark past often is accrued as the reason to why we have such gross and vast inequality in this South Africa. An Oxfam study proves that white people in this country, particularly white males, are 6 times more likely to be appointed to senior positions than their black counterparts. I would assume in 2017, that's a very dramatic measurement, Mr. Lehohla.
Well, in the 20 years of independence, post-apartheid, I mean, you don't expect a dramatic change on legacies. I think what has to dramatically change is how you deepen your understanding of the legacy, how you lay the foundational actions to turn the legacy around, how you action on that legacy for its reversals. The evidence is that inequalities continue. I mean, if you look at the income and expenditure survey, that report that I released this year, it shows that white incomes are 5 times higher than incomes of blacks. I mean, income of blacks is 97,000, of whites is 440,000 per annum. Expenditure is 60,000, 63,000 for blacks, for whites is 330,000. And the gap in savings tells the story, and in between you have Indians and colors. So inequalities are real in South Africa. They are huge, and we have been measuring them since we started the measurement of income and expenditure survey. The apartheid government never measured anything anyway. Of course, they measured the economy, they measured the CPI, but they never cared about the blacks. They didn't counted for nothing anyway. So, but since 1994, 95, we started measuring progressively, and the evidence points to a very disturbing feature of inequality. The problem, and what is very clear, is that this inequality is not going to close, because performance of blacks in schools and at university is appalling compared to whites. So this inequality is going to increase. And what is going to be worse is that the population of whites relative to that of blacks is a diminishing one, because whites are aging. So yes, the inequality will increase, but finally, there'll be very few whites to argue about inequality between blacks and whites. The biggest problem is inequality amongst blacks, although it is at a low income level. And I think that's where what your middle class should be like, and so on and so on. So, but education is the biggest driver of inequality in South Africa. The absence of equity in education is the biggest driver of inequality, where whites are accessing them. I'm not saying whites shouldn't access education. It's whether education is accessible to blacks, and quality tuition. That is whether the lecturers, the teachers that are in front of black child are similar to the teachers in front of white children.
President Jacob Zuma, Minister Malusi Gigaba believe that radical economic transformation can bridge the gap between the rich and the poor and can erode away the inequalities that we face as a nation. Do you think radical economic transformation is the solution?
Yes, I think I do understand that the radical economic transformation in the end has to transform society so that we don't see these inequalities. But if we don't do the right things first, it's not going to happen. If you can't have blacks get right tuition from primary, if you don't get blacks to have those subjects that are crucial for their own survival, mathematics and science, if you don't get blacks to progress in universities, at the moment, for every one black child that passes, completes a degree at university, you have 6 white children, proportionate.
So you're suggesting that radical economic transformation at this point is just a slogan?
It's something worth aspiring for, but the right actions have to be taken in education. They have to be taken at all levels.
When can it be implementable?
It has to be implemented yesterday. It is a generational investment. And what I'm saying at the moment, we are not investing in education to achieve radical economic transformation. If we don't do that, like in Korea, once they were independent from the Japanese after the war, they focused on education. They focused on that. And
that
if you
was
look
one of the disparities of apartheid. The fact that black people got Bantu education is one of the essential reasons why there's a break in the educational sector.
The Japanese subjected the Koreans to similar conditions that whites subjected blacks in South Africa. The Koreans focused on education, and that's the key. And I'm sure government is focusing on that. I mean, we spend a lot of money. 20% of our GDP spent on education in South Africa. That's the highest expenditure. But it is not throwing money at tuition. It is ensuring that, I mean, some of the things are, parents are voting on their feet. They are taking their children to schools in kumbis that are rickety, to schools that they think are best. And of course, 20 children die in an accident. Another 20 get I mean, when you look at education, it has to involve the public transport system, the urbanization system, the housing, the general care of children in their parents. The thought that black children can be supervised by their parents in education, it's a pipe dream. Because the parent doesn't know mathematics, doesn't know arithmetic.
So, sir, the narrative that you are painting is a policy narrative. And I mean, we're 3 weeks away from the policy conference. If what you're saying can be implemented in policy, particularly in the ANC policy conference,
we have to start
then education can aspire to develop black people.
We have to understand that the apartheid system created such fault lines that if we have a deeper understanding of that and follow through, then we can resolve the problems. At the moment, I'm not sure what it is, but what the statistics say to me is that at the moment, the black child has no chance of being inspired and supported to be educated because the parent in the first place is not available.
Mr. Lehohla, what should the ANC policies suggest to develop the black child?
I'm only a number cruncher, and I'm telling you what the numbers say.
The statistics would inform policy, wouldn't they?
Well, that's what I'm saying to you, that a black child whose mother leaves at 4 o'clock in the morning and comes back at 10 and is illiterate cannot support that child to attend school. So, and when they live far away from their jobs, which is a housing problem, which is a transport problem, which is this, which is that, unless we have understood and acted on these things, and when we probably, I mean, the policy says children and school governing boards, children must be supported. It's a good policy, I'm sure. It is a good thought. But the material conditions negate that thought. So we must wake up to the fact that the material conditions are one, and we must respond to the material conditions and seek real solutions to the problems.
My closing question, sir. Yes, we don't know at this point if Ms. Helen Zille has been suspended, or is there a suspension on the suspension itself. She stated that colonialism was not all bad, and the DA Federal Council doesn't know what to do. To me, it suggests that they don't know whether colonialism was good or bad.
Well, I wish I had statistics on whether on suspensions and non-suspensions. I think
Well, you can give me the stats on colonialism.
Well, I mean, I'm saying on suspensions, I mean, it's one incident, and I think the national statistics system would be irresponsible if you had to collect those kinds of statistics. So, regarding the narrative of colonialism, certainly, I mean, we know in the statistics that it had naturally, when you colonize, it can be for good intentions. Therefore, there cannot be any good that comes out of a system that is intended to subjugate others. And it comes out in the numbers. It shows us in the numbers. Wherever people were colonized or enslaved, if you look at black people across the globe, the evidence that is coming out, it's either the majority of them are in prison, the majority of them are in, disproportionately in prison, not majority of them, but disproportionately relative to the other population groups, be it in the US, Latin America, are actually in prison. They are less advantaged and so on. So you can look at the effects of subjugation on the black people, that it was globalization of racism.
That's the difference between quantitative and qualitative research. If you apply random sampling to look at which people are suffering today and which people are the majority today, and that is still black people. Do you think Ms. Zille should have just been fired from the DA?
No, I don't have any opinion on these matters. I mean, the Statistician-General counts and then looks at the numbers, and I'm just saying that from the numbers that we collate across the world and classify by race, you come to the conclusion that there was globalization of racism that worked against blacks. That's what I'm saying.
All right. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much. Right. It was a provocative interview.
And there you have it, South Africa, the head of Stats SA. This was a Straight Talk interview. I am Sifiso Mahlangu. Pray for South Africa.